If you add that to the James Comey investigation because of his seashells, if you add that to Letitia James because she went after him, if you add that to Don Lemon, the fact that he was at a church and Trump doesn't like him, you add that to Jay Powell, the fact that he's the Federal Reserve Chair and Trump doesn't like him, he wants interest rates hiked. Every time interest rates lowered, every time Trump has an enemy, those people mysteriously end up being prosecuted or investigated by the federal government from the Justice Department, and the person who's running the Justice Department is his personal lawyer right now. That just does not pass anybody's smell test.
So Donald Trump's revenge tour continues, and in this clip on CNN's Newsnight, we're going to see Keith Boykin always going after these MAGA goons, just completely like shut down two MAGA individuals that are trying to defend the fact that Donald Trump is now continuing his revenge tour and is now going after E. Jean Carroll. Let's watch the clip in full. I'm going to give you guys my thoughts towards the end. Let's get into it.
Good evening. I'm Abby Phillip in New York. Let's get right to what America's talking about. Tonight, the Justice Department goes after another of President Trump's enemies. This time, it's E. Jean Carroll, the former magazine columnist who sued Trump and accused him of sexual assault. CNN has learned that the DOJ is investigating whether she committed perjury in connection with those lawsuits. In 2023, a Manhattan civil jury found Trump liable for sexually abusing Carroll in a department store dressing room in the mid-1990s and awarded her $5 million for sexual abuse and defamation in that case. She was later awarded $83 million in a separate but related defamation case. Now, Trump has repeatedly denied those allegations and has appealed the 2023 judgment. Prosecutors' theory hinges on this 2022 deposition where Carroll said that she received no outside funding for her lawsuit. Later, it was revealed that billionaire Reid Hoffman had paid some legal fees and expenses. Hoffman has said that he had no involvement until Carroll filed the lawsuit, which he says is common practice. Now, I think the bottom line of this is that if you were to tick through a list of all the people that Donald Trump wants to investigate, all the people he wants to charge, E. Jean Carroll would be on that list, Stacey. And now she is being investigated despite successfully winning this lawsuit against him for defamation and for sexual assault.
Yeah, she should not be on any list because this is so far afield of what the Department of Justice would normally do that I feel like they're almost lost forever. I mean, we saw James Comey get indicted over the seashells. This is even worse because this was a woman, she's now 82 years old, and in the 1990s, she alleged back then that this sexual abuse happened by Donald Trump, and she brought a lawsuit. The statute in New York was extended, the time was extended for her to bring a lawsuit, and in 2023, she sued him in front of a civil jury for damages, for defamation. Defamation is a false or misleading statement made about somebody to the public that causes them damage or harm. And her damage or harm that a jury believed was that, first of all, her allegations were true. Jury believed that. They didn't believe Trump's denial that they weren't true. And they also believed that she was damaged. She was a journalist. Her reputation was damaged. He called her a liar, a hoax. He made it up. He said he didn't even know her. He wouldn't recognize her. And it turned out he went down in that lawsuit because they showed him a picture of her from years ago, 30 years ago. And his own lawyer said, "Can you identify this blonde woman in the picture?" And he said, "That's my wife, Marla." And he had made statements about E. Jean Carroll that she's not even his type, so there's no way he could have done anything to her. So I think that was his downfall.
But they're hanging this on like such a thin reed of no pun intended, of whether or not some of her legal expenses were paid by a third party. I mean, maybe you could litigate whether it's when she filed the lawsuit, after she filed the lawsuit, but that alone seems to be incredibly thin.
It's thin, it's weak, it's fluff for Nutter. It was already decided, actually, by the trial judge. The issue already came up, and the judge decided it. So I'll explain a little bit because it's a little bit complicated. She's testifying in a deposition under oath before trial, and a deposition is a way that lawyers get out discovery. They discover information about the case. They ask questions so they know what to expect at trial. They know what they're dealing with. They decide if they're going to settle. She was asked, "Did you receive any outside funding for this lawsuit?" The deposition was 6 months before they went to trial. She had answered no. Then 2 weeks before she went to trial, her lawyers came forward in full disclosure to the court. These are her lawyers, and said to the judge, Reid Hoffman, the billionaire Reid Hoffman, funded part of her lawsuit out of Chicago. Trump's lawyers made a big stink about this, that this is unfair and she's a liar. So the judge allowed them to re-depose her. They put her under oath again. They asked her questions about that, and it was completely cleared because the judge said, I'm fine with her credibility. It was not damaged, and I'm going to let her testify at trial, and this cannot come up.
So one of the things that you should know about this is that Todd Blanche, who's now the acting attorney general, he is a former attorney of President Trump's and represented him in this case. He's recused himself from this. But does that actually clear the Justice Department from the accusation that what they're doing effectively is going after people that the president wants to see prosecuted?
Well, to me, the number one question is, did she commit perjury? If
Is
the
that
answer,
the number one question?
well, that's what they're
given
potentially
what
investigating.
Stacey-
I know
well,
you
given
gave us the
what-
background
given what
of the
Stacey
entire
just said,
unrestricted
which is
case,
that
but
that issue was
Yeah.
litigated in the case. It went before a judge, and the judge found that it did not affect her credibility. At a certain point, it was not pertinent to the case. So is that really the main question here?
yeah, and I understand that the timing seems to be the biggest piece of this to what you laid out. But if she did commit perjury, then the next question is, should she be held accountable for that?
Can I answer
And
that, though?
I think this dividing line is, like everything else, is where you sit on the political aisle.
You know what?
If
It's
you're
not
on one
political.
side,
I don't mean to interrupt you, and I apologize.
But you are interrupting
I know
me,
I am. But this is so not political. This is about when the Justice Department goes after people for perjury, which can put somebody in jail. They go after racketeering cases where somebody might have lied on the stand. They go after political corruption cases. They don't go after a civil lawsuit for defamation out of New York against a woman who's now 82 years old.
And in a
Just don't do it.
pretrial deposition
Yeah.
at that. But again, Trump lost this case against E. Jean Carroll.
He did.
Period. The end. And now his Justice Department is putting her potentially in an investigation that could lead to a trial, that could lead to her being in legal jeopardy.
It doesn't pass the smell test. And to Stacey's point, I actually did some research before I came on the show and looked at how many times has the Justice Department actually criminally prosecuted somebody for civil deposition perjury. Couldn't find any examples. There may be some, but I couldn't find any examples at all. And the evidence seems to suggest it's so incredibly rare, it clearly seems to be political. If you add that to the James Comey investigation because of his seashells, if you add that to Letitia James because she went after him, if you add that to Don Lemon, the fact that he was at a church and Trump doesn't like him, you add that to Jay Powell, the fact that he's the Federal Reserve Chair and Trump doesn't like him, he wants interest rates hiked. Every time interest rates lowered, every time Trump has an enemy, those people mysteriously end up being prosecuted or investigated by the federal government from the Justice Department, and the person who's running the Justice Department is his personal lawyer right now. That just does not pass anybody's smell
How many
test.
times has the statute of limitation been extended by a state legislature in order to very specifically target one individual?
And what does that have to do with the fact
amount
that
of things-
Donald Trump
Well,
is
but
actually...
but I also want to address this question.
It's for all survivors. It wasn't just for Donald Trump.
was-
No, not at all.
But
It's
let me
all
address that
sexual
question on
assault.
the
But Peter,
Exactly.
that's
Perjury
not
That's
what
why we
happened
got the
here.
trial.
That was to make
It
up
was
for bad
it
law
was
in the
not
past.
extended for Trump.
Right.
It was. I mean, my recollection is this is the Me Too era, right?
Correct.
Exactly.
And so
exactly.
the statute of limitations was extended for victims in
alleged-
general.
yeah, the alleged
and
incident
Trump
occurred-
just happened to be in that time frame.
The alleged incident occurred when I was in elementary school, and that statute of limitation was extended to when I was a member of Congress. I mean, this was a very large window that was.
But that had nothing to do with
that.
that.
I guess
This is because the statute of
question on
limitations on sexual assault cases in many, many states are very short, too short, and it takes a long time. We've seen through the Me Too movement, through the Harvey Weinstein situation, how long it takes women to come forward, through the Epstein situation.
Most certainly.
So this is done in every state. That you can't narrow this down to
Okay,
it happened.
But we're
go
also,
ahead,
but we're
Peter.
also, yeah, we're also dealing with, you mentioned on the question of the exception of like the perjury charge and how rare that is. I mean, we're about to talk about Mike Flood, who was mentioned in an earlier statement. He succeeded Jeff Fortenberry, who was a sitting member of Congress, who was investigated for campaign finance fraud from some foreign donations. Without having a lawyer present, he answered FBI's questions. He was charged with lying to a federal official because he was answering off of his best recollection. The next thing you know, he is being indicted. He's being criminally charged. He resigns from Congress. He does the honorable right thing. Like, these questions of whether or not when you are trying to be truthful and accurate when it comes to the law are important.
But what we're seeing is the federal government using the Department of Justice going after somebody who Trump dislikes, his personal enemy, for a civil deposition perjury allegation. That never happens.
The question
except
is
when you have
occurring
a
within a
president
civil
who's trying to
deposition
represent the
context,
government.
which is
That means that we can't trust this guy to make honest
if someone
decisions.
committed perjury, should they not be held
Let me-
accountable?
let me-
It's a very
let me-
difficult
The judge cleared her.
Guys,
The judge cleared
one
the
second.
issue.
Let me play what Reid Hoffman said about this a couple years ago. Listen.
It is a standard practice. It happens a lot where there's outside funding of lawsuits. We didn't encourage the lawsuit to happen. We only got on board after she'd already filed it and was down the road. So you're not trying to create something that isn't substantive real, that a person isn't really doing. My team looked at it and thought that it was her voice should be heard, that because she was challenging someone who's so much more wealthy and powerful, it shouldn't be squashed. The press kind of made a big deal out of a secret. It's like, look, actually, in fact, most philanthropy in the world and most philanthropy I do, I don't like publish list of it. I just do it.
So, I mean, look, if you want to litigate whether she was telling the truth or not, I think there's actually a very strong case that she might not have been lying or withholding anything at all because of the timing that Stacey laid out. A deposition that was 6 months before trial, and then a disclosure that happened before trial. And then according to Reid Hoffman, he wasn't there on the day that she filed the lawsuit. He came in after the fact.
It kind of boils down to the fact that we know that the president is vengeful and he's petty. I mean, and that has been his entire character reveal. So it is impossible to give him the benefit of the doubt. And we've seen how this Department of Justice has behaved. The whole reason Pam Bondi isn't there anymore is because she wasn't ruthless enough to do the things that Todd Blanchard is clearly willing to do. And so you guys want us to kind of erase the history and erase the persona of Donald Trump, and we cannot separate the two because of who he has often shown himself to be.
You know, and there's another reason why his fingerprints are all over this. This trial happened in New York, but this case, this DOJ investigation was referred to U.S. attorneys in Chicago, which is where Reid Hoffman has his nonprofit. It didn't need to go to Chicago. It went to Chicago because if it were to lead to something, Trump does not do well with New York juries, so they're putting it in Chicago. It's ridiculous.
We'll see how well he does with the Chicago jury, but we'll see.
That's true.
All right, next for us, the president held a...
I wanna highlight something first and foremost before I go any further. Can you believe that Donald Trump and his Department of Justice are brazenly doing this so out in the open? I need you guys to really understand what that means. This is a man who knows his base so well that he can do absolutely anything he wants to. And he knows his base aren't going to flinch, aren't going to flicker, and they're not going to move an inch. Look, let's just be honest. This is just political retaliation. Let's just put it out there straight away. That's exactly what this is. Now, the thing for me that's most telling about it is this. The President of the United States, he's using his office to get revenge rather than doing what he's meant to be doing, which is helping Americans. He's literally allowing the DOJ to use taxpayer dollars to be able to get revenge on E.G. and Carroll when healthcare is unaffordable, the cost of living is unaffordable, gas prices are through the roof, and this is what it is that he wants his Department of Justice to be doing, instead of actually going out there and getting real criminals. The problem with what Donald Trump is doing is this. The Department of Justice is not Donald Trump or the President of the United States' personal lawyer. That's not what their job is to do. They are there to serve the American people. That is who they're there to serve. They are not a personal law firm or vehicle of President Trump and his personal vendettas. So the reality is, this is a non-issue. And I honestly do believe that just like all the other cases that he's tried to bring, James Comey, Letitia James, Don Lemon, I believe nothing will come of it. Nothing will come of this. But the reality is this is almost like a mob boss sending a sign to people. Listen, cross me, and this is what you could have coming down the line after you. Donald Trump is acting like a mob boss, and his base say absolutely nothing. And this is why I always say that to be MAGA, you have to be okay with the humiliation ritual and humiliation tour, because these two Republicans that are on the panel, this should be a non-starter. There's no defending this. It's clear and it's obvious exactly what's happening and what's going on right now. It's clear and it's obvious. But the problem is this: when you are MAGA, you don't have a backbone, you don't have a spine. So anything that Donald Trump says or does, you must fall in line. And that's the reason as to why these two are trying to make it out and make it seem like there is grounds for a case to be brought against E.G. and Carroll. But the reality is this: there's nothing here. There's nothing here at all. Let me know your guys' thoughts on this clip down in the comment section below, and do the usual stuff. Subscribe, like, give the video a thumbs up. I'll see you guys in the next one.